my dears. Granny has missed you so much. And Ginger the cat has too. Now tell me, are your teeth brushed? Your pajamas on? Now listen closely. Open your ears and your imagination, because Granny is about to begin tonight's bedtime tale just for you.
In a beautiful kingdom lived 3 friends. They were very close, and they always sat together in the garden, sharing tea and gentle conversations. One day, as they sat in the garden, one of them smiled and said, "I dream of marrying the king's chef, so I may taste every kind of food in the palace and never worry about cooking again." The second friend laughed and said, "As for me, I wish to marry the king's tailor, so I will wear the most beautiful dresses in the kingdom." Then they turned to the third friend and asked gently, "And you, who do you wish to marry?" She lowered her eyes and said gently, "I wish to marry the king himself, not for the crown or the throne, but because one day I saw him, my heart chose him, and I only wish to be by his side." They began to laugh, teasing her and making fun of her dream. What they did not know was that the king was in the city that day, dressed like a simple man, and by coincidence he heard the conversation of the 3 friends. The next day, the 3 girls received an invitation from the king, and they felt worried, wondering why. And they went to the castle immediately, bowing with respect before the king. The king asked the first girl, "I heard you wish to marry my chef." The girl asked for forgiveness and said it was only girls' talk. The king replied, "Do not be shy. Here is my chef, and he will be honored to marry you." The chef held the girl's hand, smiled at her, and said, "Will you marry me?" And the girl felt so happy she wanted to jump with joy. The king asked the second girl, "And you? I heard you wish to marry my tailor." She bowed and said, "Yes, your highness." Then the king smiled and replied, "Here is my tailor, and he will be honored to have you as his wife." The tailor held her hand and asked her to marry him. She looked at him and almost fainted with joy. The 2 friends looked at their handsome grooms and could not believe if they were dreaming or if this was real. Then the king called the third girl and said, "And you, can you tell me again your wish?" She fell to her knees, asking for forgiveness, saying she had been foolish and begging him to pardon her. Her 2 friends, instead of feeling pity, laughed at her without mercy. Then the king stood up, held her hands gently, and helped her stand. Then he bent down before her and asked, "Will you accept to marry me?" And everyone stood frozen in shock. In that moment, the 2 friends were filled with jealousy, and their joy disappeared, for she would marry the king while they would marry servants. The king and his bride celebrated a beautiful wedding and began a happy life together. But her friends could not feel happy, as jealousy filled their hearts. Each day, the king fell more and more in love with his new queen. Not only the king, but all the people in the kingdom loved her for her humble heart and kindness. A few months passed, and the queen became pregnant. and the king was filled with joy. And few months later, she gave birth to beautiful twin baby boys. The king's heart was full of joy as he held his babies, thanking God for this precious gift. But the queen's two friends became more jealous each day, and their hate grew day by day. Soon after, the king was called to war to lead his army, leaving behind for the first time his faithful wife and their newborn babies. The queen loved her children deeply and only left them at night when they were asleep. And with the king away and the babies sleeping alone, the two friends prepared an evil plan. They came in the night while everyone slept, stole the babies, and quietly slipped out of the castle. Deep in the forest, they placed the babies in a small boat, hoping they would never be seen again. They pushed the small boat into the river and left without looking back. By coincidence, two angels were passing nearby, and when they saw the two babies, their hearts filled with pity, so they decided to save them and take them to the Queen of the Glass Mountain. The Glass Queen was very beautiful and was protected by a lion, a dragon, and a magical bird. And when the angels gave her the babies, she agreed to keep them under her protection. When the queen woke the next day and found her babies gone, she cried day and night until she fell sick and refused both food and drink. The news reached the king, and he rushed back to his castle. When he saw his wife's state, he could not hold back his tears, and he promised that he would bring their children back. He entered his children's room and sat beside their empty beds, crying and wondering what to do. Then he called his ministers and the wise man of the castle. The wise man told the king that the only solution was to ask the magic owl, for the magic owl spoke only the truth. He brought the owl and gently took it out of its cage, and everyone looked at it in surprise. The owl asked the king to speak his question. With a shaking voice, the king said, "What happened to my children?" The owl replied, "They are under the protection of the Glass Queen." The king then asked, "How did they reach her?" The owl answered, "Two angels saved them from the river." The king asked again, "How did they reach the river?" The owl replied, "The queen's two friends stole them and placed them in a boat." At that moment, anger filled the king's heart, and he shouted an order to bring the two friends before him. The soldiers brought the two friends before the king, and they threw themselves at his feet, begging for forgiveness. The king looked at them with anger and said, "Why did you do this? She was your friend. I made your wishes come true. You live in my palace, a life you once only dreamed of." They began to cry and confessed it was jealousy. The king shouted to the soldiers and ordered them to be taken to jail. The king mounted his horse, chose two loyal soldiers, and without delay began his long journey toward the distant Glass Mountain. When they reached the Glass Mountain, they saw an old man sitting at the foot of the stairs. The king approached him, and the old man immediately asked for water. Without thinking twice, the king gave him water, and after the old man drank, he asked the king why he was there. The king explained that he had come to find his lost children. The old man said, "You are kind, and you are here not for treasure. I will help you." He warned him, "First you will meet a lion. If you try to pass while he sleeps, you will turn to stone, so wait until he wakes and walks away. Then you will meet a dragon who will ask you, 'What is the most precious thing in life?' Answer time, and he will let you pass. After that, you will meet a magical bird who will offer you a feather and promise great power, but do not touch him, or you will turn into smoke. Thank him and continue. At the top, you will meet the Glass Queen. She will ask you to marry her. Be careful, for her beauty makes men forget who they are." The king thanked the old man and climbed the stairs. He waited for the lion to wake and pass. "Time," answered the dragon's question with "Time." The dragon listened to his answer, nodded with respect, and let him pass, and ignored the magical bird's offer. At last, after climbing the long, shining stairs, he reached the palace of the Glass Queen. Her beauty was so great that it almost took his breath away, but when she asked him to marry her, he remembered his wife and his children. He refused, told her his story, and began to cry. Seeing his true heart, the Glass Queen believed him and called for the angels to bring the boys. When the king saw his children, he could not believe his eyes. He hugged them tightly, thanked the Glass Queen, and returned to his castle with his sons. He entered the room of his wife, and when she saw her children, life returned to her, and her heart leaped with happiness. She hugged them gently, crying and thanking the king, and from that day on, they lived happily ever after.
Granny Fofa finished her story tonight. Stars are shining soft and bright. Close your eyes, it's time to sleep. Magic dreams are yours to keep. I am safe, I am loved, I am gentle like a dove. I am happy, I am strong. Sweet dreams follow me all night long. Sleep, my little heart, sleep tight. See you in dreams till morning light.
Nighty, nighty, sweethearts.